I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast. This is a show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth and all lies told. And today I'm joined by Miss Malisa Hepner. She is a LCSW in Oklahoma. She is an author and host of the Emotionally Unavailable podcast. She has overcome extensive history of childhood trauma only to get well into adulthood before realizing trauma's significant lasting impact. She reached burnout in every area of her life and experienced profound darkness. Deciding to give healing one more chance, she began moving the pieces of her life. She quit her job, she started a podcast, and opened a private practice. She is now teaching others how to rid themselves of shame and find unconditional love for themselves and each other. So I want to give a huge shout out to Melissa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So if you could just do a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah. Well, I'm 45. I was born and raised in Oklahoma, still here, and I have three kids. I'm on my second marriage, and we've been married since 2012. I can never do the math, but 2012. I kind of had to realize I was the center of all of the conflict in my life. And well, that I was walking around hurting my own feelings every minute of every day with the expectations that I was placing on myself and everyone around me. I am a therapist and I have my show, like you said, Emotionally Unavailable, which started, well, your show is a little different in that you're like talking about any and everything, whereas mine fits in that truly, but it's like anyone who's been on some sort of journey to better themselves. Of course, I get a lot of like coaches and therapists and stuff like that, but I really try to narrow it down to like, who are you though? Why did you start this thing? Um, and I always say like it started as really like my journey to being more emotionally available because I kind of had to realize my default state was to dismiss, to avoid, whatever. And so, as it's progressed and guesting, got easier, coordination, all of the things that it takes to run a podcast, it's really just like this connective experience for me where I get to have these conversations that help me grow. And like I always say, my podcast really saved my life because A, it gave me a chance to talk. I got to process things because I talk, I process better when I'm, talking about it. But also the people that I've had on my show, I mean, I've gotten invaluable information from them. And sometimes like, if I'm in a, difficult situation and coach or a therapist is there, I'm like, so go ahead on and give me some free advice real quick. And so, like, it just really is that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm focusing all my energy on that. And more public speaking, particularly in the mental health community, but just in general. It can even be, in that motivational speaker area, but I'm really just teaching people like change begins at home with you. And when you change, the world around you changes. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm on a mission for global impact, just trying to like help people live more in their purpose and passion and aligned with authenticity.
That was absolutely amazing. I've had similar guests on my show as well. I've had coaches, I've had just people that have such impactful stories, and it is kind of a way for you to get more insight. I've learned so much more, and it's like, well, I've learned and have been taught everything else, but there you can have a guest come on and they'll share something that you've still not yet learned and you've not
Hmm.
heard, and it's like a form of free therapy a little bit. It's like
For sure, for sure. I love it. I'm like, hey, I have a captive audience. Let's figure this out real quick. Why do you think I'm behaving this way?
it's I've I've had such impactful stories on there, and I love hearing every one of their stories. And I feel like your story is going to be very impactful. So can you tell me a little bit about your childhood and share about how you've overcome the circumstances from childhood?
Yeah. So by 2 months old, I was hospitalized with like a failure to thrive diagnosis because of neglect. And my parents were both addicts. My dad was, I mean, he really didn't touch alcohol that much. It was more just like, heroin. My mom was both an alcoholic and an addict, and they were just pretty wildly unpredictable, especially together. And so we saw a lot of domestic violence. We did a lot of back and forth between our grandparents and our parents at first, then just my mom trying to get her life together. And back then, so I was born in 1980. So in the 80s, reunification was done very differently. They didn't have the supports in place per se. They had a lot of rules that these parents had to follow, and given the lack of support system, almost impossible to meet the standard. But it was just really different. And so the second she had a moment of sobriety, it was like my grandma's basically like, come, Kay, come get these babies. Like, because she really didn't want to raise us, but she felt like she had to. And so we did a lot of back and forth. And then in sixth grade, my grandpa divorced my grandma because he married his best friend's wife. And we had kind of this complete upheaval in our system because she was going through menopause and having her own mental health issues. And so she was going to have us live with our dad, who, by the way, previously had been deemed unsafe by her for us to really have unlimited contact with. So it was really scary. Like I'm this little like 10, 11-year-old girl now having to go live with my dad. My brothers were super stoked about it, but this is just like I don't feel safe. And that really shook me to my core that she would even consider that. And we did spend a couple of weeks there. And then she found this private foster care agency through our local DHS, because little did I know she had called while we were at our dad's to be like, yo, y'all got to take these kids to foster care. And then they said, no, they really do belong with you. Let us get you some help. So we got in this private foster care agency called the Casey Family Program, which was amazing. I owe so much gratitude to them. We had experiences that most kids didn't have. Like we got to go uh backpacking, hiking, rock climbing, rappelling, a lot of things. And they were very supportive of any sporting or extracurricular activity. They paid for it. We got a monthly stipend. I mean, we were for the first time ever living comfortably financially. So it was really nice. And then kind of my brothers, I'll say, continued the cycle and started using substances to cope with our crazy family. So that was a lot of trauma and turmoil in my household. And then outside of that, dad's still using drugs and we don't see him that much. Mom's still doing all her thing and we see her a little too much for how much she's doing. And then when I was 15, my dad died of an overdose. And that really rocked me to my core, obviously. And really, I can pinpoint that as the moment where I never felt safe or secure in the world again because I was hit with the reality that anytime you can just be living your life and someone will just die. And not just someone will just die, but your world can just change. And so I really started to live on edge and really like who's next. I just remember sitting around thinking about the fact that everyone I knew was going to die at some point. And I believed due to some religious programming, I felt like I was receiving some sort of punishment, but also I really believed I was going to be the last man standing. That was my role on this earth is to watch everyone I love die. My oldest half sibling, who I wasn't raised around, he had, we talked about this once and he's like, yeah, I kind of feel that way too. So I'm like, now I realize this was just a trauma response. Fast forward, I graduate from high school, meet a boy, move in with the boy 2 days later. I'd lost my virginity to him, so religious programming said I had to marry him, so that was the path I set on. And then at 22, I was pregnant with my first child, and my mom died. It was a pretty traumatic death in the hospital, but still, she was incarcerated at the time because she had been in and out of prison my whole life. But she died of complications related to Hep C and cirrhosis. And then I had a fairly stable life. I was a mom and I was really putting a lot of focus in that. I finished college, got my master's, had a second kid. And then life kind of was like, because I really didn't know what to do with myself after college. So I got a divorce, went through the divorce crazies, which was super fun, and then met my current husband, remarried, had another child, which another bout of postpartum depression entered. So that was not a good time for me. It really just reinforced so many of the trauma narratives that I had kind of just shoved off because I had a very stable life. I was not stable. I was a very reactive person and didn't understand why, and I carried a lot of shame about it. Um, but it wasn't until that third kid that I kind of started to address like something's not right. And then I heard about trauma finally from the holistic psychologist because up until then the only people talking about trauma was PTSD related to veterans. And so that was eye-opening to think I'm not just a bad person. I have a physiological response happening inside of me when I behave this way because I was a screamer, and just real short with people. And now if I didn't know you, I would freeze or fawn because I was a people pleaser. So then, like you said, I found myself October of 2023 in profound darkness and finally figured out how to climb out of that and it's been a process since then and I'm here now just sharing my light with others and showing people it's not as hard as we thought it was.
That's such a huge, impactful story. I appreciate you so much for sharing that. Um, you mentioned that you were the podcast host for Emotionally Unavailable. Did the podcast kind of help cope with a lot of the childhood trauma that you faced? And um, was the podcast something that you always wanted to do, or did it just kind of spontaneously happen?
I always wanted to do it. So when I heard armchair experts from like Dax Shepard and Monica, um, I was hooked. That was the first real podcast I had listened to. I had maybe listened to an episode of something like, but really I wasn't into podcasts and I only got into that because of running. Like I wanted something to listen to. And so I found it, I started listening to it, and I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to have these kinds of conversations and I want to like talk. So I had been wanting to do it for a really long time. And then, but I thought that I wanted to do it kind of like they were with a co host. I didn't think I was interesting enough. That was literally the narrative I felt like swirling around when I really could pinpoint it. And then once I finally heard myself say that, I was like, girl, who? We are interesting. Do it. So I pulled the trigger and I just started it. I think the act of the podcast, the routine of it, because I release 3 episodes a week. So I think the routine of it and the connection, because when I get to have these conversations, whether it's your show or my show, this lights me up. Like this is so energized. Like an hour before this, I was like trying to wake up, and now I'm like energized. So that is what I think the show has given me the most of, aside from the tools and the people that I've met, is just this is this is my purpose, is to have these conversations, and it's one of my gifts. Like that's something that I've had to become really comfortable in saying, is speaking is my gift. And I have a gift of writing too, but communication, but specifically speaking, I it took so long. I was so afraid to talk before, because with writing I could craft a perfect sentence and be like, ah, I win. I win because I said it better than you, and you cannot pick apart anything that I said to say inappropriate, blah, 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 blah. Speaking, I did not have very much control over myself. So I was afraid. And now, like, the longer I've done this, my first episode aired April 29th of 24. So the longer I've done it and the more committed to authenticity I become, which I was pretty committed to authenticity when I started, but I'm so much less afraid to speak what I believe to be the truth about anything. And so the more I get to do that, I'm just having such a good time not watching every word that comes out of my mouth.
That's kind of how my show has been. A lot of my friends that I grew up with didn't really care about anything I was going through, and I was always kind of just silenced. And
Hmm.
when I started the podcast, it was my way of being able to finally have my voice heard and to finally get my thoughts and opinions out. And it's so rewarding to be able to finally say what I've wanted to say for years. I did like a whole episode about my classmates and just really railed them, I, which I was nice to some of them, but I mean, I was really honest about some of them as well. And I was just like, finally, I get to say what I want to say about you after I've been silenced and did not have the chance to say it for years. It's been it's been so rewarding, and I find podcasting too is a cope therapy because I've talked about my mental health struggle on here, and I was always vocal about my battles with it. Not I really didn't start opening up till after college, after I started college and got out of high school and was finally able to be around people that dealt with the same thing I dealt with and that shared it as well. And they, because I was always under the impression of being judged for what I was going through. I lived
Hmm.
at, which I'm from Alabama. We're so judgy here. People just have nitpicks and everything. And it's,
Here too,
people,
brother.
so if people that live in the South understand that everyone is so nitpick and they will judge you so hardcore about anything. And so I just always kept quiet. And then it wasn't until I think about 2021 I started opening up about my mental health journey, and I finally said on my social media account what I was going through. And the amount of people that I had from when I went to high school with reach out and be like, I had had no idea you were going through that. And I said, well, y'all didn't give me a chance to say anything. Y'all didn't give me a chance to open up.
Well, I really resonate with the theme of feeling silenced. That is, I think what I've learned is that we really kind of all carry a subconscious narrative that we're too much and not enough, and that we're fundamentally unlovable. And I think we silence ourselves a lot. I also learned that I was telling the exact wrong people. First of all, I had surrounded myself with emotionally unavailable people and centered them, tried to fix them and be there for them and whatever. Um, in so that I wasn't the focus. So then, of course, when I go try to be the focus, they're like, wait, I don't know how to do that. So I just really had to unravel a lot of that. But that theme of feeling silenced popped up over and over and over. Like, are you a Leo? Do you have any Leo stuff?
I'm I'm not huge into horoscopes or signs, but I'm a Capricorn,
Oh,
so
okay. Okay.
so I guess you could say I'm very vocal about stuff, I guess.
Yeah,
Making
no,
it
I just,
available.
yeah, but I think, I really do think that there's a lot of us who felt that exact when you said the word silenced, I was like, yes, because that is what I felt. And I think a lot of it was self-imposed without realizing it. But I mean, high school, ugh, atrocious. That's an atrocious
Oh,
period of every young person's life, isn't it?
oh, it's awful. Literally, the only group of people I hung out with, I look back and I questioned my thought process of why did I surround myself with those people? And it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a thing of what was I thinking? Because it was kind of like what you said. You hear all their stuff, whether it's relationship type issue. That was the main thing I had to hear from every single day was
Yes.
relationship stuff. And I was like, okay, which I pretended to care, and I always listened because I didn't want to be that person that they would be, they find me as like a coping mechanism and finally be able to share and then not be able to hear anything that they say. But it's like what you said when it came around, and once it started being okay, here's my chance to have the floor. They didn't listen. They didn't care. They would probably pretend that they were listening, but then they would just kind of toss it out the window, and it was so frustrating. And I was it got so frustrating, and I'm not friends with any of them anymore. They're all
Yeah.
gone. I tried to keep friendships with them, but I finally had to learn that I need to drop every single one of you guys. So I dropped all of them. I don't talk to any of them anymore. They actually all did me dirty. In the end, after we graduated, they all ruined it for me. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with this kind of people anymore. And now I have such a huge support system now. And I'm so grateful for it because I deal with a lot of personal mental health stuff. I deal with depression, anxiety. And luckily, I have friends that deal with the same thing. And so now I'm able to rely on them and tell them what I'm feeling, and they can rely on me and they can tell me whatever they're feeling. So it's such a good relationship of you can have the floor and I can have the floor, and we don't ever get mad at each other. I don't judge anyone at all from past stuff because mental health stuff makes us do stuff that we would normally
Oof.
not do under a great normal
Mm-hmm.
circumstance. And I highly do not judge at all.
And with new information, right? Like when we
Right.
know better, we do better. And
Hmm.
so that's a big part too of getting better is forgiving yourself for the things you didn't know before. Like that's been a really big part of my healing is just to forgive myself for being imperfect in general and for not knowing better before. And for knowing better and still making mistakes now. Like I'm going to make mistakes. And I think that's been very pivotal for me is learning like healing isn't about changing everything about yourself. It's about being willing to sit in the grimy, messy middle of exactly who you are right now and accept it and love it and hold it and have unconditional positive regard for all of it. But it occurred to me that we as a society believe accountability has to equate to shame and perfectionism, and I put it in a way that says I was holding myself to a cross of perfectionism, and if I couldn't be perfect I was unworthy. And no, what? So that's what I've really worked through is like right here right now exactly who I am before I'm ever any of this or that. Right here I'm worthy. Like I was born intrinsically worthy, and nothing external of me changes that. And I just have to cultivate that love. And I kind of believe that the love we cultivate within is the only real love that exists. And we project that onto others, and then they project theirs, and we share. Like that's how love works. And that's the reason that I was walking around feeling like I loved everyone else more than they loved me, and that like literally nobody loved me. And that's because I didn't love myself. And once I loved myself, I felt the reception of love from others. Like I could feel like, oh, of course they love me. I love me. Like it was totally different. And just cured so much of those lonely thoughts, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Who have been some huge inspirations or people that you've looked up to during this whole transitional period and even growing up? Do you have any inspirational people that have been in your life that have helped you guide or helped you through everything?
Yeah, I had some really good social workers. I'm still close to one of them. Um, her name's And I had a mentor when I was like 14. Her name's We're still friends. She's amazing. Like I had really strong women in my path my grandma, that's funny because I would have used to have said my grandma. Like when I was a teenager, I said she's the reason that like I'm what I am or whatever. But that's because she programmed me to say that because she was a narcissist. But I mean, I do have a lot of compassion for her experience too, but that the peace I have gained over that is new. So, now I'm in this weird place where it feels weird to talk bad about her because I'm not mad at her anymore. But like, she, there was some inspiration from my grandma, but really, she just was really controlling. But a teachers I had teachers really impacted me because I was that codependent, weird kid that was constantly, sitting by the teacher trying to make them be my friend or whatever, but
Yeah.
I'm still friends with my sophomore English teacher who I had when my dad died. She was very like nurturing to me. And some college professors have been really pivotal. They probably don't know that, but they were. Um, Friends. I've had friends that really inspired me. And now it's really just people on my show. I think I inspire myself a lot. And yeah.
With you being a mother now, what's some things that you want your kids to know about your past?
Mm. Well, I mean, they know everything. I've always been very open because I didn't really know how else I was so afraid of them taking the path of my parents and my brothers. So, uh, I have talked to them very openly about most of my struggles, most of the childhood stuff. They're really open to receiving that information too. But I think what I would want them to know now is to understand victim consciousness and that I really did create uh, a real sense of victimhood in myself with all of that thinking of that I loved everyone more than they loved me, feeling betrayed all the time because I created these social contracts full of expectations. Because that's what we do. We run around loving the way we want to be loved. And when we do that, we're like, and then you're gonna do that back for me, right? And they never agreed to that. And so yeah, I would want them to know that peace and happiness are so much more possible than what it like looks like on the front, especially, I'm raising kids in at a time when the world is falling apart at the seams. So it's scary sometimes. Like my oldest is 22, and it's scary for him sometimes to reconcile how to have a life of peace when so many bad things are happening. And so I think I would want them to know that like self-love is the key to all of it.
If you could go to your 13-year-old self and give 13-year-old Melissa some advice about what was to come, what would you tell her?
Ooh, I don't even know. Um, because I think 13-year-old me was doing like for everything happening in my life at that time. I think she knew. I think at that age, truly, and I know you just like you pick that age and whatever, but the what's coming up in me whenever you ask that is I think that age specifically was so tapped in to my higher self and understanding that the stuff that was happening eventually wasn't going to matter. Because when I was 13, that is when I was in seventh grade, and I had a couple of incidences with periods because nobody was talking to me about like how to use, pads correctly and stuff. So one incident that I started without realizing it at school one day. I mean, it wasn't the first time, but I just hadn't felt that I had started. And I was like, oh no, that was a whole mess. That was embarrassing. And then the second incident that caused a lot of chaos in my life is that I had a jacket over my lap sitting in gym class because I wanted to sit without worrying about like blood showing or whatever. I knew I was on my period and I knew I always leaked. I adjusted my pad really quickly, and then you already know what rumors started. I was masturbating in class. Okay, cute. No, I wasn't, but it was a whole rumor that circulated for a while. And people would like, how mean kids are. So, like, is it true that
Mhm.
you were blah, 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 blah? And I'm like, no, it wasn't true. I was adjusting my pad, but thank you so much. That was a time that was so hard for me, and then it resolved and it was fine, and I like saw people for who they really were. And I think that's when I probably hardened a little bit during that time because I was like, yeah, you really just can't trust people. But I also felt so tapped into this calling of mine and purpose. Like, you're going to transcend all of this. Like, I feel like my higher self was guiding me so much during the middle school years. That's the reason I survived them, because they were rough, man. And then like even my brother started like losing his mind during that time. So it was like so much happening at once. So I really do. I feel like that myself now probably was talking to her then, like, you're gonna be fine, honey. Like, so I would say probably what was being said, which is like, none of this matters, and all of it you'll find a place for all of this at some point.
Absolutely. My mental health journey started when I was 13. I got introduced to it young, and no one in my grade, to my knowledge, was having going through the same stuff I was going through. I think we did have one girl that kind of showed cuts on her arm. So I think she was self-harming at that point. But it was kind of weird because I knew what it was, but at the same time still didn't really know what it was. And I just knew that that was bad, that you just don't cut yourself. And no one around me had depression at all. And so I couldn't really go to anyone and say, hey, I'm dealing with this. And especially in middle school, because my grade was so awful and they were so bad about going to other people and spreading the secrets about it. If you told one person, the whole class would know by the end of the day
Mm-hmm.
what was going on. And so when I got diagnosed with my depression, I just kept it quiet. No one understood or had any idea about what I was going through except for my mom. She had dealt with some mental health struggles and she knew exactly what it was. And I remember she told me that she said, I've prayed so hard ever since you were born that you did not have to deal with it. And it kind of just really broke both of us down that it ended up happening that way. But it's something that I've had to live with for 10 years now, and it's been a rough ride, but I've always come notorious on top, and I've always been the number one person that has overcome it. So, if, what advice would you give to someone that's dealing with childhood trauma or they're an adult and still have not really coped with it? What's some advice or some things that you've done that have helped you significantly?
Good question. Okay, so one of the things that was really instrumental in my healing was a book called The Finding Peace Method. Eh, or the Finding Peace workbook. He does have a Finding Peace method, a whole course on it, but the workbook It broke shame down into different archetypes. What I have come to understand about my particular brand of depression is that I was full of noise in my brain that I could not control. I, like everyone else, until we get this figured out, was intellectualizing every one of my experiences. I didn't know how to feel anything. So I lived in my head, and it was a really ugly, nasty place to be. So once I learned how to quiet that noise, then I learned how to connect to myself, how to feel emotions in my body, how to quit dismissing everything in myself. I saw it said really beautifully yesterday, which was, um, when you tell someone to stop talking about their pain, what you're actually saying is, you don't want to deal with yours. And that is so true. We dismiss the experience of others because of the discomfort that we feel when our feelings start to happen because of their experiences. This is why we are completely lack empathy overall. Like some of the best people I've met still had areas where they couldn't have compassion for somebody, and that's because of our own stuff. So connecting to yourself, loving yourself, growing that love, respect, adoration, compassion, forgiveness. Once you do all of those things for yourself, you're able to freely give them to others and to connect with others on that level. And then I like to say, embody the light, like integrate all of your learning, have a hygiene practice of, like, in the morning, wake up and do EFT tapping, do mental check-ins. Like when I wake up, I immediately go, how am I feeling physically? Because that's going to determine how I spend my time in the day, because I honor kind of what my body needs. I'm 45, we got to take care of ourselves. I get tired easily. So I kind of wake up, check in, what do I need? And I love those days I wake up with lots of energy. But I also know not to expend too much of that, like don't go too hard, just like get the shit done. It's all good. But yeah, I think um quiet the noise, figure out how to quiet your own noise. I personally believe how I kind of did that. I told you about the book. I recommend that to everyone. But what I learned is that I couldn't really tell in the middle of the overthinking cycle. And so I told my subconscious, like, hey, one of the things we're going to do to clue in is, like, if our neck, back, shoulders are tight, pretty good indicator we're up in here overthinking. So traditional grounding methods didn't really help me because I was that much of an overthinker. So while I'm trying to find five things I can see on one side of my brain, over here is still saying, you're a loser or whatever it was. You know what I mean? So I learned to just start speaking anything I could see in front of me, like doorknob, laundry basket, blanket, bed, quickly. And then when you're doing that, you are present. Presence is the key to all of this. Learning to live in this moment, the here and now. So that's actually, like, I would do that all the time until I could figure out, like, because you got to get from like a 10 to a 6. And so when you're just like rapid firing the things that you see in front of you, you'll feel your whole body relax because you're not up here fighting the battle anymore. At that point, when you can feel the presence, then I say, all right, what was I overthinking about? And usually there's the feeling that's involved in any of that is going to be rejection, abandonment, betrayal, neglect, abuse, or the fear of one of those things. Those are the five things that you've been dealing with. And it's usually, for me, my biggest ones are like neglect and betrayal and rejection, but the neglect and betrayal wounds are real big for me. So, um, I would say, what were you thinking? Oh, okay. So what were you feeling? Ah, you felt rejected. Okay, okay. Sit in that for a second and actually feel it. Like, yeah, that really hurt my feelings. Maybe I'll cry, maybe whatever. And then if you're not feeding this feeling with these nasty thoughts, emotions go in 90 seconds or less. And so I could just breathe it out and move on. I'm making it sound simple. This is after I've done a lot of work on that finding peace workbook. You know what I mean? Like a lot of
Mhm.
work. But it actually is pretty simple. I mean, especially that once you get the noise to quiet down, everything else is cake. This was the thing that was driving me insane, my brain.
That's a huge mechanism. I've never heard about this. If you're very much overwhelmed with stuff, just start listing stuff off that you see. One of the things that I've learned, and this kind of everyone's different, of course, so this might not work
Hmm.
for everyone. But one of my therapist a while back at the time said, try the category listing method. And for people that don't know what that is, it's a mechanism and tool that you can use if you're having like a huge anxiety attack or you're just really overthinking. You do like a category list of stuff. So what you'll do, and I think I've talked about it, but on other shows as well, but I'll mention it here again. It's more of a list five things, and then you can that are very generic, and then you can slowly break that list down. So one thing that I've learned is to do that. And how it works is think of just like a generic basic thing. So you'll think, okay, think about um five chip brands, and then in your brain you'll list five brands of chips. So it could be Takis, it could be Lay's, it could be all these stuff. And then once you get that, you can kind of break that down. So then you could go, okay, name five chip flavors, and then you could break those down. And
I
then
like that.
and so once you and the whole point and reason for it is it gets your brain to think about what you're trying to do. And it doesn't work for everything. Like if I've mainly used it for anxiety attacks, and if you're like
Hmm.
very stressing out, I'm like, okay, think of five dog breeds, and then you can think, okay, name five dog breeds that have short hair. And the
I
whole point,
love this.
and so the whole point of it is to really get down to it to where you're just sitting there for 5 minutes thinking, what's a dog breed with short hair? And it's like,
Exactly. And you're not thinking about the thing that was spinning you out.
exactly. And so that
Hmm.
was one of the big things I've used for anxiety. And sometimes if you're having like a huge anxiety attack, it might work. And again, that might not work for people. But someone
Sure,
out there,
sure.
it's just that was something I had learned and it was just such a huge thing. I've and it can be anything too. It doesn't have to be on chips. It don't have to be dollars. I mean, it could be on different kinds of movies. It could be albums
Yeah.
and music
That
that you
sounds like a
listen
great
to.
grounding method. Yeah.
And it could be like five vacation spots you've gone to. I mean, it can just really be anything. And then you can try to take that generic listing, like if you take like generic colors, like five colors, you can break that down into, okay, what five colors mix well with this one? And then you really have to sit there and think about, okay, so it's a like, okay, what would make a pretty color if you mix green with all these other colors? And then you kind of just list colors that would mix well with green. And it really starts to
Yeah.
think, and you sit there and you really think, and then you really get caught up in it. You're
It
like,
actually sounds fun.
and then you're sitting there like, what the fuck? You're just like,
Yeah, you're like
what
playing
mixes
apples to
with
apples
green?
with yourself. I love
It's
this.
and so what that does, it's a huge, great mechanism, and it helps you get your mind off whatever you are trying to think about because you're just worried about what color mixes with green
Hmm.
beautifully, and then that's a way that I've coped with it, and so that's one of those. But I really like your method as well. It's just like listing stuff. Okay, it's like picture frame, scissors, like box.
Yes, yeah, 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 yeah. I'm serious. It started in the car. When I was in the car, I was like, ugh, overthinking, overthinking. And so my overthinking was just kind of pissed off all the time at somebody. Like it was
Uh-huh.
always someone, And so I'd be like, and then and then you know what else, fighting with them, or just some way they've betrayed me. And I
Uh-huh.
was just done, man. I was sick of my own shit. I was sick of it. Like I really did not want to live this life anymore where I cannot like have a meaningful conversation with anyone because I'm triggered all the time. And I can't even drive down the road because I'm just living up here, just being
Right.
miserable. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I was trying the traditional method of five things I can see, and I'm still pissed. So I just started it. I just started rapid firing like red car, blue light, green light, red sign, stop sign, all these things. And immediately I felt a difference. Like, relaxed. Like I'm not tense, just fighting the battles of life. But all in my head.
You try everything that you can. I mean, even I can just imagine you're doing that with people, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm trying to cope with myself. Leave me alone. Just let it be. Just shut up and leave me alone."
Why
If I
don't you
want
try it? Name something
to,
that you see, okay? We can do it
yeah.
together.
Uh, well, I love that mechanism. I had never heard of that before, so I might have tried that sometime if I'm like
Do
very
it.
stressed out.
Yep.
If it's
Well, because
really,
the next thing is, after you get yourself calm, the next step is to understand that anxiety is rooted in an unaddressed feeling.
hmm.
So, anxiety is thinking and spinning because you don't know how to feel a feeling. Once you can get into your heart and feel something, your brain doesn't feel like it's got to like control every last thing anymore. So the next step is just to be like, all right, what the hell was wrong? What am I upset about? What's the feeling? And feel it. And then I'm not going to say that 30 minutes later it's not going to come back because if it's something that's really hurting you and you need to process it, it is, but you just repeat, repeat, repeat. I mean, there's still stuff that I'm like, oh, I thought I was over that. I guess I'm not. Okay. I'm not dismissing it though. For the moment, I'm just getting myself calm and putting myself in a place to address it. But we can't do that when we're at a 10 fighting with people in our head.
Exactly. And it's one thing that I want people to take away from the category method is try to pick a very good category that you can't think of anything, and that will really help you not get your mind on focusing. Like for me, it would be like list five bones that are small, and then I'd be sitting here like, uh, I
I
really should
love
have.
that.
I was like, I really should have paid attention in anatomy class, but it gives you a chance to sit there and be like, look at your fingers and be
Yeah.
like, is that a small bone? It's like, and then it's like, okay, I remember there's a small bone maybe here, but I don't know what the name of it is. So it's like, you really want to try to get to a category to where it takes you 10 minutes and sometimes 30 minutes just trying to complete the whole list. And then
You forget what you're upset about because you're over here on Google, like, what is this bone called?
exactly. So thank you so much for sharing your story, and I really appreciate that coping mechanism that you did for the rapid fire. I think that's a great tool, and I appreciate that so much. So for people that want to kind of follow you more and kind of would like to learn more about your journey, where all can they find you? And just feel free to plug everything that you got going on.
Okay. So I'm very active on Instagram at melissa.hepner. My link tree is there, but my website is empoweredwithmelissahepner.org. And I've just started creating kind of seasonal workbooks. And my first one just released this week, and it's called Safe to Be Seen, and it's a self-reclamation workbook. It's just an instant download. You can print it. Eventually, I want to learn how to make these digital to where like you can actually type in it or whatever.
Hmm.
But right now, I just, I'm kind of a think it, believe it, do it, and,
Yeah.
improve on the process later. But I don't, perfect is the enemy of good. So I'll just do my best and put it out there because what it's got is it's got some shadow work prompts, it's got mirror work prompts, just different ways to connect with yourself and help with these visibility wounds. People like us who felt silenced are also terrified of being seen while simultaneously wanting more than anything to be seen. So it's this constant push and pull. So that's, the first workbook, and that's at any of those links. It's really cheap. It's like $11.11. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. And then there's a link to my podcast on there, Emotionally Unavailable. And I love my show. I think it's really good. So, yeah.
Yes, I will definitely put all of her links in the description box below. And as always, I'll put all of her social media accounts down there. My dog's currently barking in the background.
Oh, I don't hear it. So your headphones are
Oh,
excellent.
oh, that's great. Um, But anyways, I'll put all of her links down in the description box below, and her website, her podcast, social media will be all in one place for you to find. You feel free to follow me on social media as well, Instagram, TikTok, Lethal Venom Podcast, as well as my Facebook and YouTube channel, which is Noah's Podcast. And of course, you can always listen to Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcast from. I'm on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Pandora, YouTube. It's basically everywhere. Feel free to check those out as well. Huge thank you to Melissa. Thank you so much for joining me and coming on sharing your story. I think your story's so impactful, and I think it affects so many people that it makes them feel less alone. And I really appreciate you sharing the rapid fire method with me, and hopefully my audience will learn some have it was a new thing to them as well. Hopefully they can adapt that into their life and help them cope with it. So appreciate you and thank you so much.
Thank you. I loved being here.